Welcome to our channel. We are the Two Wheel Buckeyes. And welcome to our motorcycle ride to the old West Virginia State Penitentiary, one of the most notorious correctional facilities in West Virginia. Today we're going to visit almost as inmates in our brush with the law and explore the history and the legends surrounding this imposing structure, which housed some of the most dangerous criminals in the country for over a century. We'll learn about the inmates, the guards, and the riots that marked the prison's turbulent past. We'll also discover the eerie stories of paranormal activity that have been reported by visitors and investigators alike. So, buckle up, rev your engines, bring our bail money, and let's embark on this thrilling adventure to Moundsville Prison.
Here he comes. You're busted. Are we pulled over?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that road's in West Virginia.
From 71 to 70. Once you exceed 15 over, your fine's really substantial, so I'll give you a 1 mile an hour back. It'll make a real big difference on your fine, okay? Court date's optional. It's not mandatory that you go. If you choose not to go, that's fine. You just got to make sure it's paid by that court date or else they expect you to be there. That's fine. That's your court address. That's a phone number of the clerk. If you got any questions, there's a website you can take care of it on, okay?
Okay.
All right, sir. Be careful.
All right. Well, folks, we're heading down 7, almost to Moundsville, and yeah, just as I mentioned, all the state troopers out. I just got pulled over for a 70 and a 55. I assume the 4-lane was 70 again, but he said it was still 55. So, yep, I got myself a ticket. So we're going to prison.
Well, you are. I'm going back home. I wouldn't do well in prison.
You're going to prison with me. Next stop, prison.
Oh, you're funny.
So this is the outside of the old West Virginia Penitentiary. It was in use from 1866 to 1995. Established 1866. Prison for men and women convicted of felonies until prison for women was established at Pent Springs, 1947. Capital criminals were hanged here, 1889 through 1950. Electric chair used until death penalty was abolished in 1965.
This is original equipment, the controls and the late stay phone, and all of this would have been inside the execution chamber in the former death house. Unfortunately, we no longer have that building. The state tore that out in 1967. But when we're on the north yard here just a little bit later, I'll show you where that foundation, where that building once stood. I'll tell you a little more about a couple of those executions. You all are going to see the north end, though, was the original side. That's the Civil War era side. It was actually built by the first inmates to arrive here. From 1866 to 1899, they built their own prison. Now here's the problem. They only built it to house about 800 guys. In the 1930s, they had over 2,700 inmates. The cells over there are 5 foot by 7 foot, and for many years, there were 3 men living in each one of them. When you see these cells, it's going to blow your mind. It wasn't a long-term plan. So if you take the wall over there behind me and stretch it south, South Hall was built by contractors, construction crews, from 1929 to 1959. This was done to alleviate that overcrowding problem. Inmates would have otherwise built this side, as they did the north, but October 1929, when the Great Depression began, Congress passed the law no inmates would be hired for work. Of course, you think about it, they didn't have the steadiest flow of supplies for quite a while. Depression, World War II, later Korean conflicts, and so on. So like I say, 1959 is when this site was officially completed. And in 1995, most of the inmates here lived on this side of the penitentiary. Your mainline general population inmates are your run-of-the-mill convict. Murderers, car thieves, burglars, drug runners, bank robbers, kidnappers, people like that. About 600 of them live down in Newwall, down the hall. That'll be our final stop here a little bit later. Out of those inmates, if any of those mainline inmates had trouble adjusting to prison life or coexisting with staff and population, they ended up in segregation in North Hall. North Hall was the lockup unit, like the jail inside the prison. It was used for disciplinary actions. So those guys up there were locked down 22.5 hours every day. They much prefer to be over here in Newwall or mainline, GD, general population. Right here, this was their second visiting area. This was a contact visitation. So there would have been a bunch of tables in here. But this is where inmates were allowed one hug, one kiss with their loved ones at the door. Then they would sit across the table with their visitors, and they were allowed to hold their hands for the remainder of the visit, usually about an hour, no more than 2 hours at a time. That's why you can tell the artwork in here reflects family-friendly environment. There were 3 inmates who painted this room as a nice gesture for the little ones. Of course, this was nerve-wracking for anyone to walk in here years ago because the kids had no idea what's going on, right? You know, it was a noisy, smelly place. The CO up above with the shotgun didn't help either. So they done this to make them feel hopefully more comfortable. One of the 3 inmates who painted this room was colorblind. His name is Sean, and because of his condition, is why the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are wearing the wrong color sashes and they're holding the wrong weapons. If any of y'all have seen us on any of the YouTube or TV shows over the years, you may have an idea what some of us who work here call this hallway. I've noticed y'all been noticing Jasper there on the windows. You know, 99% of the tour, I like to, you know, obviously this is a history tour, so I like to share operational history and tell you about the construction of this prison. But sometimes in here I do like to touch very, very briefly on some of our paranormal history, because we do have a lot of that as well here. Many of us who work here, we prefer to call this Shadow Man Hallway. A reason for that, in May 2004, my good friend Paula Gear was staying the night here. This was around midnight. She's in here by herself. She's heading towards the lobby. She gets about halfway down. She heard a metallic noise behind her. Of course, as you would, Paula flips around. And right in front of the new cafeteria door, there's a solid dark shadow standing there facing her direction. She put her light down there, and at that time she said it seemed a little transparent, but whatever it was appeared to have acknowledged the light. It kind of, you know, like, what's this, what are you doing to me? Of course, that's weird enough, but she continues walking backwards. She had a Sony Mavic. She raised it and took the photo that has become somewhat infamous in terms of the prison and the haunting here, whatever you want to call it, of the Shadow Man. So we do have a copy of it in our museum. For that matter, it's all over Google if you search for it. Now, admittedly, a little before Polly's visit, around 1999, MTV was here. They filmed a pilot episode of Fear. That has been off air for many moons now. You can find it on YouTube if I'm not mistaken. It's a fun show to watch. They got a lot of the history wrong. Nonetheless, it helped get us put on the map, so to speak, in terms of being, like I say, supernaturally active, haunted, whatever you want to call it.
So this is the door right here that they saw the ghost.
Mm-hmm.
This is that new dining hall. Again, this is the newest part of the prison action, March 1987. Inmates did appreciate this. As strange as it sounds, they felt they put the effort into acquiring through the uprising. This was the only area to speak of they had access to each day with AC and heat as well. I can tell you that in the winter, the housing units could maybe on a good day be 45 or so. The hottest recorded temperature was taken here on the 4th tier of the cell block one day in July at 130 degrees Fahrenheit.
Being in that dining hall's made me hungry.
So this is all North Yard. Over in the distance you see what resembles a church steeple, but that is the North Wagon Gate. That and what would have been a nearby wooden stockade was the original penitentiary. But the first 100 or so inmates to arrive actually lived in the North Wagon Gate, like sardines, packed in there on double bunk beds on both floors. while they built this side of the penitentiary. Every block of sandstone you see on this side was cut, beveled, and laid by convicts' hands. Painstaking effort for them to ironically build the place that incarcerate them, but they felt a sense of purpose given this job, so they actually put pride into this work. And you'll really see that pride here later when you see the south end that was built by contractors with machine cut stone. Does not hold a candle to the north end here in the quality and character of this construction. Moundsville Penitentiary was loosely modeled after our sister prison, which is Joliet up in Illinois, Joliet State. You watch Blues Brothers with Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi at the beginning of that movie. Elwood picks Jake up from Joliet Jake. Gothic Revival style of architecture. Beautiful example of it at that. But Gothic Revival architecture is basically resembling a castle, you know, with the battlements and turrets. Of course, this was a different world back then, but this is supposed to look, you know, like a place you didn't want to end up at. Instead of these fences, picture a two-story brick building. And it was built here in 1899, cost the state around $7,000 back in those days to build. But this is where all those executions, state-sanctioned executions, were performed. Now, until June of 1931, you could have came here on the day of a hanging. You would have came through the wagon gate with your kids and a picnic basket. They charged you $2 a person, and you could go inside and watch.
Wow.
Again, different world back then, but the Moundsville newspaper would advertise the hangings, and they would say things like, you know, pack a picnic and come enjoy a nice hanging. Well, June of 1931, Frank Tyre was executed. He was convicted of the murder of his wife, and Frank was 5'8" and weighed over 350 pounds. Now, when a man is hanged, if it's done correctly, the rope is measured on a calculation of height and weight. Frank's rope was too long, so he instantly decapitates. His head landed in front of a group of people paid $2 to be there. Yeah, they got their money's worth, but that was another lesson learned the hard way. After that, the warden said this is going to be invitation only from here on out. And we're going to kind of imagine once more here. Picture that gone, again, another two-story brick building. Because until 1947, the prison was co-ed. Men, women, and children were housed here over the years. The youngest inmate I've ever discovered was 12 years of age. Tommy Williams. I actually met him a few years ago, and he's up in age now. But when the ladies were here, they were housed in an old two-story brick building there. So they done their best to keep them separate from the men, best they could. And in my opinion, it was one of those ladies, they had about 100 or so here, but one of those women was probably the most infamous inmate ever in this prison, if you ask me. Kathleen Maddox, you may not recognize her name, but I know everyone's heard of her son, Charles Manson. Charlie Manson's mom and his uncle, Kathleen and Luther Maddox, were both here for a few years for armed robbery. In the 1930s, they were in Charleston, West Virginia. They robbed a gas station with a broken ketchup bottle. So, got him a few years in here. At the time, Charlie's about 6 years of age, growing up with his aunt, Glenna, up in McMecken, just a few miles away. Now, still to this day, he has family nearby. Of course, after everything happened with Charlie, he's out west. And in March of 1983, he wrote a letter to the warden here, Donald Bordenkircher, requesting transfer from Vacaville Correctional Facility to Moundsville State to put him close to his folks. Now, we have a copy of that letter in our museum. Bordenkircher, the warden he wrote, had a reputation as being a tough warden, and he talked tough. If you ask me, he was one of the better wardens they ever had. But in true fashion, he got a piece of paper out and he responded to Charles Manson with, "Dear Charlie, when hell freezes over." No paper for Charlie Manson here in West Virginia. So I will tell you, prior to him moving to California, he was actually married here in the local courthouse to a lady named Rosa, who lived in Cadiz, Ohio, not far.
Probably have to get me a new basketball for when I'm out here playing some ball.
I'll ship one to you.
Now these bullpens right here, these were rec yards for the North Hall. And North Hall, as I said earlier, that was the lockup unit, not just the most troublesome, violent guys here at this prison, but all of West Virginia's prison system. For example, there is a medium security prison near Virginia on the state line in Hutton'sville. So if they had troublesome inmates at Hutton'sville that they were getting, we'll just say, a little tired of, they would threaten them with Moundsville. You know, if you don't straighten up, we're sending you to Moundsville, straight to North Hall indefinitely. North Hall has 160 cells. They're 5 by 7 by 7. They're made of battleship steel type material. And again, 22 and a half hours a day they're locked in. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner is fed to them on plasticware inside their cells. The only time they would leave the North Hall, they would be strip searched, escorted out, usually one, no more than two at a time, until you have 3 to 4 here, 3 to 4 in the bullpen next door. They get 1 hour out here on those days. They take them back in, they strip search them again, give them about a 10-minute shower, and then they put them back in their house to their cell for the next 22 and a half hours. Now the inmates call this the Alamo up here. The reason is they said it was their last stand. It was a kill or be killed type of environment. It was hell on earth. Many of the guys in here knew they would never leave prison. It made them feel as if they had nothing to live for, making them more careless and very, very dangerous. The razor wire surrounding us here is a testament to that. It looks like it was installed last week. That is from 1987. That is stainless steel military grade concertina wire, very much like what is used in combat areas. And they were really only locked out at night, being general population. Now the problem was, this is back when the prison was at peak overcrowding with almost 3,000 inmates. These cells here are the ones that had 3 men living in each one.
Wow.
Each one had 2 bunks in it. If you notice about this high or so, all the way down, you'll see little holes where the rivets used to be for that second bunk. And the third man, or as I prefer to say, the weakest of the 3, had a mattress on the floor. And I say it that way because you imagine in a place like this, they're not going to pull straws and flip a coin to see who's sleeping on the floor. So unimaginable. You know, I mean, this is 3 guys, and it's not always guys my size. You know, a lot of these guys are yoked up. They're, you know, lifting iron and everything. You know, 3 of them per cell. So it's just crazy. So after the '86 riot is when this was turned into full-time lockup. 1 man was kept per cell, 22 and a half hours. The strip searches were all in style. The beanhole at the bottom of the door is where they're fed and given their meds. When they came up here in '95 to do that, these men and women were wearing a riot gear. A helmet with a face shield that went below the chin, a 50-pound lead flak vest, shoulder, elbow, and knee pads, and as they walk up, they're paced along in the gun walk by an officer with a 12-gauge shotgun. They had assaults on officers every single day in here. I understand some days almost every shift, usually during these times. They had to be very careful so as to not get their hand too close. They could pull your arm in there, do something to your hand or your arm. Some of these guys had janitorial duties. They were known as hall boys, and they were known to occasionally stock up on broomsticks and mop handles. They'd turn them into spears. A CO was giving a man his meds one day. The inmate had a broomstick. He didn't realize it. When he ran into the officer's face, it knocked his front teeth out. That's one reason the mesh was installed, to make it harder for him to reach through or grab you, stab you, what have you. And also this would catch big chunks of feces. That's more commonly what would happen is known as gassing. If you're an officer, you go to feed this man, you look away for a split second to fill his cup with sweet tea or whatever. You get blasted in the face with a cocktail mixture of hot water, cold water, spitfire, urine, vomit, feces, and blood. And snap it off by hand and sharpen it on the floor or even occasionally on a cell bar. But you'll notice the floor of number 8 has grooves in the doorway where they sharpen so many shanks there. The top left corner of Scrappy's door panel down on my pinky, you'll see how that's missing, how it's not flush. Again, what that looks like at that time. So they would do this, you know, and same thing here on 10, top left corner down about 7 inches or so. So, but they would find those shanks every day in the prison. Occasionally we still will find them. So, but like I said, they could turn anything into a weapon. You know, they're allowed items. You know, the state had to give these guys certain items by law, and they could take those same items and turn them into deadly weapons. So this was the day room for North Hall. These tables is basically where they prepared their trays. The food cart's over there. So, you know, moving it back and forth from the dining hall several times each day. But basically, they put all the servingware out, portion their servings out on the tables here. It's a lot easier and safer area to stage that right in here and then start to distribute it. Most of these guys, when they went out to the yard, they came down through here and were escorted out through that door. Now you're going to see there's 2 square holes in that fence caging. That would have been the strip search over there. So they would derobe, they'd hand their shoes closed through those windows to an officer to search, and then another officer conducts a strip search. They'd have them open their mouths, wiggle their tongue, shake their hair out. They would also remove dentures if they had dentures. But arms straight up in the air, turn slowly, bend over, cough. They bring crazy items in here in crazier ways. And Not just razor blades, but packed a piece of razor blades in under their tongue, hacksaw blades in their shoes, in the soles of their shoes, under their belt, blades of any kind could be hidden, depending on their build, their certain areas of their body, things like that. So, just wild stuff. This would have been the closest that they had to a lobby back in the day. Excuse me. But this immediate area, we prefer to call the wheel just for this contraption. It's basically an old-fashioned revolving door. They installed it in 1894. They operated it by hand for a few years. 1899, they went up to Wheeling, bought a trolley car motor, and motorized it. That's why there's a spindle on top, but it had a cloth belt wrapped around it. Now, the wheel and the north gate would have been the main entrance and exits for the prison for anybody and everybody, regardless of whether you're coming to work, visit, or live here. So there are only 2 of these on Earth. The other one, last I heard, is still in operation over in England at H.M. Strangeways. That's a prison in Manchester, near London. So, but it doubled as an extra layer of security, keeping inmates over here and away from the front and upstairs. It was controlled by an armed officer in the cage on the other side of the wheel, who would have had the big key that went to this door, which you could argue is one of the more important locks in the prison. One reason this side is flush. It'd be a little bit trickier for them to sabotage it from this side with something where they could jam this door, pop it open later. So it's always been ironic to me that security devices installed in the 19th century is better than what they had in the 1990s. So on North Yard earlier, we would have been on the other side of the central wall. Of course, keep in mind, before 1929 and the construction of the south end, that was the original south wall. If you look at it at an angle, you'll see it has a slant to it. Now, again, this was all built by contractors, so you'll see that contrast. Machine cut stones compared to what the hand cut that the inmates done over there. So quite a difference. The South Yard was for mainline, general population inmates, which I don't like to say they had it nice, but they had it a heck of a lot better than North Hall inmates. These guys could spend most of their days out here as long as they didn't have commitments to work or schooling here otherwise, but they could spend as early as 8 in the morning and late as 10 p.m. So they had a walking track that goes all the way around, down in the fields where they have their ball games. They called themselves the West Virginia Cougars, and of course, having nothing but time to practice, they were pretty darn good athletes, very much like the longest yard. Local high schools and colleges used to come in here and play these guys. Tickets would be sold to the public so the families would come watch as well. Now, admittedly, the buses out here and the obstacle course, that's not original. That's just here for those trainings that they do host. The chapel was built by inmates. That was around 1979, 1980, somewhere in there. That was an all-faith chapel. They had a number of services each week according to the respective faiths here, most of which were Christian, a lot of Protestant Catholic services, and also some Muslim and Hindu services as well. So that's a very active area, important area for a lot of these guys. At times, local churches would come in as well to have service with the convicts. When the inmates built the bathrooms, they built those as well. It looked a lot different. It was closed off, it was walled off. Had a couple doors over there, but we've already figured that out. Having a private bathroom in the middle of a maximum security prison yard is not a smart idea. A lot of weird, wild, wacky, nasty, shady stuff happening. There was a guy named Paul who was over in the corner where the stall now is. He was running his mouth to a couple guys one day that didn't like that. They grabbed him by the back of his head and bashed his face off the commode. My buddy Steve has copies of crime scene photos. I've seen them. I don't know how he lived because his head looked like ground beef. He had to have reconstructive surgery on his face. And after that is when the warden had the walls torn out to improve the visibility and safety of that area. Of course, prison, there is no privacy in prison. A little room over here, that would have been the prison's small-scale AM radio station. It was broadcasted by inmates. They play music and news reports, and they broadcast sports games. Broadcasted under the call sign WPEN. That also doubled as a TV repair station, so they had that as well. But just about everyone here in the prison, at least just about every cell, has some kind of little radio in it or another, transistor radio or what have you. Underneath there is one of the entrances into the full-size basement on the south end. That's mostly where the haunted house attraction is located. But there's an indoor recreation room down there that was used on bad weather days. If it was below freezing or a thunderstorm, whatever, they would take these guys off the yard in groups of about 100 or less for a couple hours and just get them out of the elements. Now that room was more or less a pool hall. It had pool tables, ping pong tables, even couches, arcade games. It was an area for the inmates to relax, but it was a very dangerous area for officers to spend time in. So a lot of times those inmates were left unattended. Now, in a place like this, certainly you can imagine the types of things that's going to go on when they know that likely they can get away with whatever they want to. I think those guys are about to shank each other or something. But, you know, like I say, you can only imagine the types of stuff that went on in there. Give you a better idea, the inmates called that room the Sugar Shack. So this is New Hall. This is basically twice the size of North Hall. You got 4 cell blocks in here with 320 cells. These are 5x7, just slightly taller than North Hall cells. Some of these had 1 man and some did have 2 men living in there. So you got 500 to 600 inmates living in here on average over the years. Each block had a gang shower behind the central wall. They could shower as many as 9 at once. And like I say, these guys really, again, they didn't have it nice, but a lot of these guys had jobs in the prison. And they're really only locked down from about 10 p.m. to 6 in the morning or a little after. What would happen every other hour of the day, on the hour, is they would open up every door in here for 10 minutes. That was known as the 10-minute run. So it gave them time to get somewhere else in the prison they wanted to go to or be back in their cell. For example, if an inmate is watching TV for a couple hours, then he gets the notion he wants to walk to the yard. Well, he has to wait till, for example, 2, 3, 4 o'clock. When, you know, on that 10-minute, then he's got 10 minutes to leave his cell and get to the south yard. Now, he can stay out there in theory until that evening, but if he wants to come back in, he has to wait till the next hour.
I should have slowed down. I should have known it was 55.
Shame on you. Now you must pay the price.
I only have one thing to say. If the glove don't fit, you must acquit.
All right, everybody ready? Yep. Here we go.
See ya.
Bye. You come over here and give Daddy some candy?
You crack me up.
I've been in here a long time. Okay, of course I was driving.
I didn't do it.
But
You were the one driving.
You were supposed to be navigating. You're supposed to tell me.
I did when I saw him.
You tell me every other move to make when I'm driving. Why didn't you tell me I was driving too fast?
Because you needed to learn a lesson.
That's a misdemeanor right
This
there.
is not my fault.
All right, we'll see you. I'll see you at Christmas.
I'm just going to go over here and lay on the floor. All right. No, not really.
That'll teach you.
Uh-huh.
Treat me better.
Uh-huh. Right. Going to McDonald's.
All right, you're free. You think you've learned your lesson?
Yeah. Don't let you drive.
Thank you for coming out. Check our website out, wvpentours.com. We also have night tours, things like that. So if you're interested in this spookier stuff, you can check it out on our website, social media, stuff like that. Most importantly, I hope this is the longest you have to spend in prison unless you come back and see us. So, wish you safe travels, and with that, we're going to head back up towards the lobby.
All right, well, this is the museum they talked about. There's some of the older pictures. You'll have to come through here when you get an opportunity. A lot of memorabilia, a lot of old things from the prison. That's Charlie Manson's letter that he talked about, that he asked to come in here. be closer to his parents. Here's some of the example of the shanks that they have found over the years. A lot of ingenuity as far as how they created those things. Some of the shotguns that were used by the corrections officers. Some of the
Story
older...
about the Lindbergh baby.
Oh, yeah.
That's how old that is.
Yeah.
1932.
This is back when they had executions.
Oh my.
So this rope was used April 4th, 1913. They had 94 people executed here. And this is a picture of old Sparky. Can I get it behind the bars here? You can get a look at it. It was in use for many years. So right across from the prison is what they call Grave Creek Mound. This world-famous burial mound was built by the Adena people sometime before the Christian era. The mound was originally 69 feet high, 295 feet in diameter, and was encircled by a moat. There were many mounds in the area, hence the city's name, Moundsville. In 1838, the Grave Creek Mound was tunneled into, and 2 long tombs with several burials and grave offerings were found. So we're gonna go into the museum. We're probably not gonna spend a lot of time in there, but we're gonna go up to the top of the mound. All right, we're gonna walk up to the top of the mound, and it's a pretty good hike. So take your time. We'll show you a little bit of it here, but once we get to the top, it's a really nice view of the prison. All right, we're finally up here at the top. Show you what I was talking about. Great view of the prison. For you paranormal folks, they do have a paranormal tour or that you can come in and take. I think it's an overnight deal. Similar to the Mansfield. They have different types of tours for different things you're interested in.
And they have a huge Halloween event with like haunted houses and all that stuff close to Halloween.
So it's about 2 hours, 20 minutes from Columbus if you're coming from that way.
Well, that wraps up our incredible journey to the old West Virginia State Penitentiary and the Grave Creek Adena Mound. We hope you enjoyed riding along with us as we explored these fascinating historical sites. And thank you to those who contributed to our bail.
If you loved this adventure, don't forget to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling motorcycle rides and travel adventures. Until next time, keep the rubber side down and stay safe on the open road.